3 terrifying true night delivery horror stories. Story 1. The Unwelcome Guest. James had always found solace in the routine of his job as a delivery driver. The late-night shifts provided him with an opportunity to explore his suburban town, in a way few others could. The streets were quiet, and the eerie calm was sometimes broken by the sound of his tires in the asphalt. But one fateful night, everything would change. It was just after midnight, when his phone buzzed with an order. The address was on the outskirts of town, a location D heard whispered about among his colleagues. "Stay away from that house," D said. Strange things happen there." Intrigued but dismissive, James accepted the order. He needed the money, and he couldn't let a rumor deter him. As he drove, the street lights began to flicker, casting long shadows across the road. The air felt heavy, charged with an anticipation he'd quite place. He arrived at the address, and his heart sank. The house loomed before him, a dilapidated Victorian structure, its paint peeling and windows dark. Overgrown weeds sprawled across the yard, giving it a forsaken appearance. He parked the car, feeling a shiver run down his spine. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out, the chill of the night wrapping around him like a shroud. As he walked towards the door, a sense of dread settled in his stomach. He knocked, the sound echoing in the stillness. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing a woman standing in the shadows. Her hair was wild, and her clothes hung loosely on her gaunt frame. "You brought the food?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. James nodded, trying to ignore the unease pooling in his gut. She stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. Hesitating, he walked into the dimly lit hallway. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of dust and something else. Something foul. The interior was just as unsettling as the exterior. Old furniture was covered in sheets, and strange symbols were painted on the walls in dark, twisted designs. "What are those?" he asked, trying to mask his apprehension. "They protect me," she replied cryptically, her eyes glinting in the low light. "You shouldn't have come here." "Just doing my job," James said, attempting a casual tone. He handed her the food, but as she reached for it, he noticed her fingers were trembling. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. A low growl emanated from somewhere deep within the house, reverberating through the walls. James froze, his heart racing. "What was that?" he asked, fear creeping into his voice. "Leave," the woman shouted, her expression morphing from eerie calm to panic. "You need to get out of here." Just then, James heard a thud from the basement, followed by a low, guttural sound. The woman turned, her gaze darting towards the sound. Without thinking, he bolted for the door, but it slammed shut, trapping him inside. Desperation surged through him. He raced down the hallway, searching for an exit. The growling intensified, reverberating off the walls, and he could feel a presence closing in. "Help! Let me out!" he shouted, pounding on the door. "Downstairs," the woman cried, her voice shaking. "You have to go down." He hesitated, glancing back at her. The shadows seemed to swirl around her, and something cold coiled in his gut. He turned and dashed toward the basement door, throwing it open just as another thud echoed through the house. Descending the stairs, he felt the temperature drop. The darkness engulfed him as he reached for his phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam illuminated damp walls, revealing more of those disturbing symbols scrawled everywhere. Suddenly, he spotted movement at the end of the corridor. A figure emerged from the shadows, a oat's shape, tall and hunched, with glowing eyes fixed on him. Panic surged through him as he stumbled backward, nearly losing his balance. "Get out!" the woman screamed from above. "You have to leave." James turned and sprinted back up the stairs, fueled by pure terror. He yanked open the basement door, bursting into the hallway. The woman was gone, only the flickering light remained, casting eerie shadows. Desperate, he threw himself against the front door, slamming his shoulder into it. With one final push, it swung open, and he stumbled outside into the cool night air. He could hear the growling behind him, closer than ever. Without looking back, he ran to his car, fumbling for the keys as his hands trembled. The growling echoed in the darkness, a reminder of the horror he had just escaped. He started the engine, the headlights illuminating the empty street ahead. As he drove away, he caught a glimpse of the woman standing in the doorway, her eyes wide and pleading. But behind her, a dark figure loomed, creeping close. He felt a wave of nausea wash over him, as he realized he had narrowly escaped a nightmare. From that night on, the stories of that house took on a new meaning for James. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed him, something that lurked in the shadows. Why? Ting for another opportunity. Story 2. The Mysterious Customer. Emma thrived in the bustling city, where the neon lights and lively streets kept her energized during her late-night delivery shifts. She had always enjoyed the thrill of navigating the urban landscape, but one night would test her resolve in ways she could never have imagined. Our phone buzzed with an order from an upscale high-rise known for its reclusive residents. The customer, Mr. Blake, was notorious for his odd behavior. Stay alert when you deliver to him, her colleagues had warned. He's eccentric, definitely a bit off. Curiosity piqued Em. Ma accepted the order, her stomach fluttering with a mix of excitement and unease. She parked her car outside the building and entered the luxurious lobby, where the opulence felt almost suffocating. After taking the elevator to the penthouse, Emma stood in front of the grand door. Taking a deep breath, she knocked, and the door swung open, revealing Mr. Blake. He was tall and gaunt, with wild hair and a wide smile that seemed both inviting and unsettling. Come in, come in. He beckoned, stepping aside. Emma hesitated but stepped inside, feeling an immediate chill. The interior was lavish but strange. Dark paintings adorned the walls, depicting surreal and nightmarish scenes that sent a shiver down her spine. Nice place you have, she said, trying to maintain a light tone. Thank you, he replied, his voice smooth, but tinged with an unsettling undertone. I enjoy my privacy. As they talked, Emma found herself increasingly on edge. Mr. Blake's questions became invasive, delving into her life in ways that made her uncomfortable. What do you fear the most, Emma? He asked, his eyes glinting with curiosity. Oh, just the usual things, she stammered, trying to deflect the conversation. Spiders, heights, nothing serious. He chuckled, but it was a hollow sound. Ah, but fear is a powerful thing. It reveals our true selves, Tio. You think? Feeling trapped, she tried to move toward the door, but he stepped closer, blocking her path. Do you want to see something fascinating? He asked, a hint of madness in his voice. Before she could respond, he turned and walked deeper into the penthouse. Emma hesitated, glancing at the door, longing for an escape. Curiosity and dread battled within her as she followed him, her instincts screaming at her to leave. He led her to a dimly lit room at the end of the hall. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the walls were lined with more of those strange paintings. What do you think? He asked, gesturing to the artwork. They beautiful. Unique, Emma replied, her heart racing. The images seemed to shift, the figures in them twisting into grotesque forms. Every piece tells a story, he said, stepping closer. But some stories are meant to be experienced, not just viewed. Just then, she noticed a shadow moving in the corner of her eye. Emma turned to see a figure lurking in the darkness, a pale silhouette that seemed to blend into the shadows. Fear coursed through her veins as Mr. Blake's demeanor shifted. You should stay, he said, his voice low and threatening. I could show you the truth. Panic surged within her, and Emma took a step back. I really need to go, she stammered, reaching for the door. But he lunged, grabbing her arm, with a grip that felt like iron. Not yet, he hissed, his eyes wide with a manic energy. Not ready to leave. With a surge of adrenaline, Emma broke free and sprinted toward the exit. She yanked the door open, but it slammed shut, the sound reverberating through her. Behind her, the shadowy figure began to move, drawing closer, its form shifting unnaturally. Emma! Mr. Blake shouted, his voice echoing with rage. You can't escape the truth. Desperate, she turned and ran down the hallway, her heart pounding. The walls seemed to close in around her, the paintings morphing into horrifying visages that taunted her as she fled. She reached the elevator, pressing the button frantically as she heard his footsteps behind her. Come back, he yelled, the madness in his voice sending chills down her spine. The elevator doors opened, and she lunged inside, slamming the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, she glanced back and saw Mr. Blake standing at the end of the hallway, his expression a mix of fury and despair. The elevator descended, and she felt the weight of the night pressing down on her. When she burst into the lobby, she sprinted to her car, fumbling for her keys. Heart racing, she sped away, vowing never to return to that penthouse. The haunting memory of Mr. Layek and the dark figure would linger long after the night had ended. Story 3. The Haunted Route. Tom had always found comfort in the predictable nature of his late-night deliveries. Familiar streets and friendly customers created a sense of normalcy in the chaotic world around him. But one fateful night, he would encounter something that shattered that normalcy forever. On a slow evening, Tom accepted an order that led him to a remote area known for its urban legends. The locals whispered about strange occurrences and ghost sightings, but he brushed off their stories as mere folklore. As he drove further into the countryside, the roads became narrow, and the trees grew denser, blocking out the moonlight. The GPS signal faded, leaving him to navigate by instinct. He passed an old, abandoned gas station that loomed like a specter, its windows shattered and covered in grime. A sense of unease crept over him, but he pressed on, determined to deliver the food. Finally, he reached the address, a decrepit house at the end of a long, overgrown driveway. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the rustling leaves. Tom parked the car and stepped out, the chill of the night wrapping around him like a cloak. He approached the door, hesitating before knocking. It creaked open, revealing a scruffy man with wild eyes. "You brought food?" the man rasped, his voice hoarse and unsettling. "Yeah, here you go," Tom said, handing over the bag. The man's gaze was intense, sending shivers down Tom's spine. "Thanks," the man muttered, taking the food without a hint of gratitude. Tom turned to leave, but he felt a strange pull, an urge to stay. Suddenly, he heard soft whispers calling his name. The sound was ethereal, rising from the depths of the house. Tom shook his head, trying to clear the unsettling thoughts. "I should really go," he said, edging toward the door. "Stay a moment," the man insisted, stepping closer. "You, safe here." Tom's instinct screamed at him to run, but curiosity kept him rooted in place. The whispers grew louder, almost demanding. "Leave now," a voice urged, but he couldn't. He moved. Then, from the shadows, he spotted movement, a dark figure creeping closer. Fear coursed through him as he stepped back, nearly losing his balance. "What is this?" he stammered, glancing at the man, who now wore a manic grin. "Just a friend," the man replied, gesturing to the figure. "He's always watching." Panic surged within Tom. "I need to go," he shouted, turning to flee. But the man lunged at him, grabbing his arm with a grip that felt like iron. With a surge of adrenaline, Tom broke free and raced toward the door. The dark figure emerged from the shadows, revealing a ghostly apparition with a tormented expression. Desperation fueled his flight as he yanked the door open, dashing into the night. Outside, the air felt electric, and Tom sprinted to his car, fumbling for the keys. He could hear the man's frantic laughter behind him, echoing through the stillness. The apparition followed, its gished face etched into his memory. He jumped into the car, slamming the door shut, and started the engine. As he sped away, he glanced in the rearview mirror, his heart racing. The house loomed behind him, a dark silhouette against the starless sky. He swore he could still hear the whispers calling his name, a haunting reminder of what he had narrowly escaped. From that night on, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that he had brushed against something far more sinister than mere folklore. The darkness of that house haunted him, a constant reminder of the shadows lurking just beyond the light.